266, proceed on to Delta Romeo, hold short of Delta taxiway, maintain a listening watch.
Okay, north on Alpha, and we check right
Stealth.
on 2978.
It's the most feared aircraft design in the world. Flying fast and almost invisible to enemy radar, it can attack without warning, kill with uncanny accuracy, and then, just like a ghost, it disappears. The stealth fighter and bomber were intended to be the ultimate offensive weapons. And they would be, except for one even deadlier design that is superior to any technology known to man. It flies in total silence, rarely misses a kill, and never runs out of gas. The greatest engineer on Earth has created the owl, nature's stealth fighter. In the human world, the F-117A stealth fighter and the B-2 bomber are revolutionary aircraft. Their unique aerodynamic shapes, built with top-secret composite materials, make them virtually invisible to radar. And that's why they're the most feared weapons in the world today. To create the ultimate aircraft, most aeronautical engineers would start with a stealthy, silent design. But the best we can do was one-upped by nature a long time ago. In the natural world, stealth has been the key to survival since the dawn of time. The owl has been refining its technology and techniques from the very beginning, while humans, it seems, are still stuck in the dark ages. It's true that aircraft design has come a long way in just a few hundred years, but no plane can do what the owl can: fly in total silence.
It's quite clear that the owl developed this unique technique of flying silently, and to some extent it puts our development of human flight, human-powered flight, over 100 years a little bit to shame.
Jeffrey Lilly is an aeronautical engineer at NASA, and he thinks owls are the key to the future of human flight.
We would very much like of course, to fly like the owls.
Today, NASA is seeking answers hidden in its feathers and wings. But there's a lot more to the owl than a unique physique. At the University of Oregon, neurobiologist Terry Takahashi is studying top-secret technology in the owl's cockpit, its brain, and amazing sensory capabilities.
Large portions of its brain are devoted to processing of sound. And all those brain areas are bigger in proportion to these birds. They can hear sounds that are somewhere between 10 and maybe even 15 decibels quieter than the absolute quietest that normal humans can hear.
Superior to any human invention, nature has created the most innovative aircraft design on Earth. A craft built not for speed, but silent, invisible, deadly attack. The Owl is exactly the kind of aircraft the military would love to build, if it could. The F-117A Nighthawk is the world's first operational aircraft built to exploit what humans call low observable stealth technology. Its unique diamond-like shape is designed to deflect radar waves away from the aircraft, shrinking its profile on enemy radar screens. Radar-absorbent materials on its surface reduce its profile even more, making it almost invisible.
The fact that it's very difficult to detect the incoming stealth fighter, it makes it very much like the Owl. Once the Owl decides to strike, it'll descend very silently so the mouse doesn't know it's coming.
Silent and very lethal, nature's stealth fighters first appeared in thick, lush, prehistoric forests. Here, the great horned owl, known affectionately as the tiger of the woods, eats anything it can catch. All owls have incredibly acute hearing. It's so good, an owl can hear a rodent rustling in leaves 50 feet away. But when it's airborne, it flies so quietly, even its own super-sensitive ears can't hear its wings flap. Diverse weaponry, dynamic senses, deadly silence. The owl has it all. Today, we're spending millions to unlock the secrets of the owl's stealthy biological design. But so far, we can't come close to replicating it. So how did nature do it? A good place for any design to start is at the beginning. For the owl, that was over 200 million years ago. Owls are unique amongst birds. They're built for stealth. It's the perfect hunting strategy, and today it's still being improved on by species like the snowy owl of the Arctic. Nature began testing its stealthy designs millions of years ago, when the first prototype owls appeared. But they didn't evolve overnight. In fact, its original design is shared by all birds. The origins of flight began about 200 million years ago, when the bird's first ancestors appeared alongside the dinosaurs. Some early dinosaurs themselves had wing flaps that allowed them to glide. But the real breakthrough came with feathers. Feathers evolved as smaller dinosaurs grew elongated scales that first became proto-feathers and then ultimately complete wings. Bones became hollow and were supported by an internal honeycomb of trusses. But these earliest birds were awkward flyers, and so evolution stepped in to remove any excess weight, including teeth. Soon enough, a practical working design for a flying bird appeared. About 65 million years ago, a comet struck the Earth and ruthlessly wiped the dinosaurs out. But out of the chaos that followed, new creatures evolved, including millions of mice. Owls too evolved quickly to hunt them. They acquired a powerful night vision capability, acute hearing, and a razor-sharp beak and talons as their preferred and fearsome weapons.
All these things make an owl a very good predator and has allowed it to survive for millions of years. So they're built well for hunting.
Today, there are 205 species of owls, found in every ecosystem on Earth. On the Great Plains of North America, or deep in a boreal forest, owls can look quite different. The hawk owl, for example, has the shortest legs of all owls, which helps them stay warm in cold northern forests. But the hawk owl's closest cousin, the burrowing owl, has the longest legs to help it get a good view of the vast treeless prairie. What all owls have in common are acute senses.
In these birds, both the eyes and the ears are large. So if I were an owl, I would have an ear opening that's about this big, and an eyeball about like the size of a very large grapefruit.
All owls have incredible binocular vision. Inside the eye, light-sensitive rods outnumber color-sensitive cones by at least 10 to 1. As a result, in low light conditions, owls can see at least 10 times better than humans. But in the bright light conditions of an Arctic summer, where there's 24 hours of sunlight, razor-sharp eyesight is the snowy owl's meal ticket. And although its eyes are fixed, its head can rotate almost 300 degrees to find and focus on a distant rodent with amazing speed and accuracy. The tundra is as flat as a pancake, and the snowy owl scans the landscape incessantly with its acute binocular vision for any sign of prey. Up here, lemmings are the main menu item, so they're right to be nervous, scurrying into holes at the first sign of danger. But the owl is wise to be patient. It can sit on its perch for hours, watching and waiting for a flash of movement. The snowy owl is an accomplished, sharp-eyed killer, catching dozens of lemmings a day. But like all owls, it also has remarkable hearing. The battle cry of pilots who fly stealth warplanes is, "Rule the night." But don't tell that to a barn owl. In the Middle East, the owl is known as Shaba, the ghost bird. And in its world, after sunset, it's the owl who rules. Inside its domain, the barn owl is so finely tuned in to the frequency of rustling prey, it can hear a mouse step on a piece of straw. The mouse is well aware of the barn owl's talents and needs to stay constantly alert, watching or waiting for death from above. But the owl's broad facial disc can capture even the slightest sound made inside the barn. When the mouse makes a move, the owl is right on it, ready to kill, even in total darkness. The owl's uncanny ability to hunt by sound alone is unique. Now, scientists are using unique technology of their own to learn how it does it. At the University of Oregon, neurobiologist Terry Takahashi studies both the owl's hearing and its brain.
Oh, so you have to get close. One of the reasons why we're looking at barn owls, they're very good at picking off prey in absolute darkness, like the stealth fighter. The real interesting experiment that was done early on was some researchers put an owl in a very dark room. They released a mouse into the room, but the mouse was towing with about 1 meter behind it on a string, a crumpled piece of paper. And what the owl consistently did was to strike the rattling paper and not the mouse.
Other experiments in the past 50 years have shown that many owl species can hunt in total darkness. But the big question is, what are the secrets behind the owl's superb hearing?
What makes barn owls different from other raptors is really the shape of its face. So come here, let me look over here. You can see that it's round, and it's kind of a heart-shaped face. And these feathers that make this round shape act really like a funnel. So the sound waves are channeled right into the ear openings. The right ear is actually located below the left ear. But despite that, the right ear actually acts like a microphone pointing upwards, so that it's more sensitive to sounds coming from above, whereas the left ear is actually like a microphone pointed downward.
Inside the barn, the movements of the mouse send sound waves arcing through the air up towards the owl. The sound reaches the left ear first and helps indicate the location of the mouse. When both ears register the sound waves at the same time, it means that the mouse is now directly in front of the owl. But since the mouse is constantly moving, the owl too has to constantly move its head to maintain a precise fix on its target. With the speed of an ultra-fast supercomputer, it takes just milliseconds to coordinate the location, time, and intensity differences of a sound, faster than the software in the cockpit of a stealth fighter.
the brain of the barn owl actually builds a map of acoustic space, kind of like a radar screen.
And the owl's radar-like brain is deadly precise. To see how it works, Terry puts his owls in an anechoic chamber, an echoless room also used by military aircraft designers.
The room, in addition to being very quiet, is also very, very dark. And again, it's an effort to control the environment, and control the stimulus that the owl is supposed to be paying attention to. We want to essentially simulate the natural environment of an owl, dark, say a barn, and the speakers are broadcasting sounds that are mouse-like. During hunting, what the bird does is it looks at its radar map or sonar screen and says, ah, there's a mouse, and it's down and to the right. It'll turn its head to it, and then, which will bring the image of that active source right to the center of its screen. And so if the mouse starts to run away and starts to move, then the blip on its biological sonar screen will also move, and the owl will once again readjust its head to bring it back to center. As the bird gets very close to the prey, it will at the last moment replace its head with a talon and dispatches the prey. So how's the bird doing today?
This one, the auditory alone, it did pretty well. This trace shows how the bird turned towards the target at first and then localized it secondly. This next trial, I'll try auditory and visual.
Now science is learning what nature did a long time ago. When designing a stealthy aerial hunter, it's a good idea to put a powerful supercomputer in the cockpit.
Here we go.
Let's turn it around.
Oh, okay.
Barn owls are like nature's stealth fighters. The fact that it's very difficult to detect the incoming stealth fighter, it makes it very much like one of these guys. The engineering that went into building this is probably a lot like the engineering that went into building one of these guys.
Hunting at night by sound alone is only one of the owl's truly unique technologies. Today, silent flight remains a technical impossibility for stealth aircraft. But when owls fly, they're so quiet they can't hear the movement of their own wings. Deadly silence is next. Almost half the size of a football field, the B-2 bomber is huge, and its 4 massive jet engines make it anything but silent. Even so, its unique shape can't be detected by radar. For a warplane, that is stealthy flight. But nature's stealth fighter makes no sound at all when it hunts. An owl attacks in total, deadly silence. And then, as stealthy as it arrived, like a ghost, it's gone.
The stealthiness of the owl has 2 components to it. One is being able to locate prey without having to make an active sound. And the other, like the stealth fighter, is it can't be detected by flight sounds.
Conventional aircraft are detected easily by radar. The waves bounce off the exterior, revealing its location. But like the F-117A, the B-2's unique shape deflects radar, reducing it to the size of an insect on enemy radar screens. Building an aircraft to scatter radar and still fly it close to the speed of sound is incredibly complex and could never have been achieved without the use of supercomputers. But nature didn't need a computer to build the perfect stealth aircraft. Instead, it used feathers. By the time a young owl grows up, it's covered with over 7,000 feathers, each one designed especially for silent flight.
All other birds than the owl make noise, but the owl was silent as far as humans were concerned. We started to look at the owl's feathers and noted that the feathers of the owl are different from those of all other birds.
In most birds, wind passing over its wings creates turbulence and, as a result, noisy sound waves. But not the owl. Its feathers evolved to eliminate wind turbulence.
The owl developed these changes in its feathers to fly stably, at slow speed, without stalling, and flying silently.
Unlike all other birds, the owl has a fine comb on its leading edge feathers that maintain stability during flight. While airborne, these soft, velvety feathers also don't rub together and don't create noise. But it's the fine comb on the fringe of trailing edge feathers that really makes silent flight possible. These feathers break up wind turbulence, turning it into smaller, quieter air whirls. And that creates a flight so silent, even the owl can't hear its own wings flap.
It's very interesting that if we remove the comb at the leading edge and remove the fringe at the trailing edge, the owl can no longer fly stably and is very noisy, just like other birds, and would never get a good meal.
Mice may be the owl's primary food source, but they're not defenseless. They too have good ears. Yet even a mouse can't hear the owl coming. So far, no human invention has come close to matching the design of nature's silent, stealthy hunter. Except perhaps its weaponry. But the weapons the owl does have makes it a formidable killer. Across North America, dozens of owl species are on the hunt, searching for both an ideal spot to dine and an all-you-can-eat menu. After a forest fire, nature is magically reborn. And usually that includes a mouse population boom. For the hawk owl, a burnt, blackened tree branch is an ideal perch to scan the bare forest floor below. The hawk owl is an aerial acrobat. It's incredibly fast, and observed in real time, it can pick off prey in less than the blink of an eye. On the vast North American prairie, there's not many trees, but there are thousands of prairie dogs, all burrowing holes deep into the ground. And when a prairie dog moves on, the aptly named burrowing owl moves right in. And for it, a small mound of earth is ideal to watch for foraging mice. Like all owls, it flies silent and strikes before the unlucky rodent senses even a hint of danger. The young owls rarely leave the safety of their burrow and can run quickly inside it at the first sign of danger. Even owls have their enemies. But in almost every environment on Earth, nature's stealth fighter has learned to survive and thrive, especially at night. Even in a pitch-black forest, it can navigate between trees with uncanny precision. In a barn, deep in the forest, day or night, the owl always flies straight to the kill. But wherever it hunts, formidable weapons are key to its success. The owl's claw has 4 talons, razor-sharp daggers to capture its prey or grab onto a roosting post. Muscles and tendons in the talons have a ratchet-like locking system. Ridges on the tendons lock the talons in place and prevent the grip from slipping. When it's ready to let go, the owl moves the tendon and the muscle slides, releasing the talon. The owl's arsenal also includes a scalpel-sharp beak capable of delivering a killing blow, and then dissecting its prey with surgeon-like dexterity. Without exception, on the attack, nature's stealth fighter is deadly, whether it's the large great horned owl, the tiny saw-whet owl, or the barred owl.
The owl developed this unique technique on perch to prey, a very steep approach, flying stably as a wonderful stable flying platform, approaching the prey. The prey wouldn't hear before the claws would then grab it.
And this stealthy hunter never misses. Well, almost never. Sometimes the mouse gets lucky, but not for long. The owl recalibrates its position, and if it gets a second chance, makes no mistake. After a kill, owls waste no time in gorging. The head is a delicacy and is often eaten first. But most of the time, prey is swallowed whole. It's a tough job for younger owls when the mouse is almost as big as they are. The owl's digestive system is designed to handle an exclusive diet of meat. In the stomach, special gastric acids dissolve meat quickly from bones or fur that can't be digested. These are pressed into tiny pellets and regurgitated. It's a high-protein diet. The super high-octane fuel of nature's stealth fighter. The many faces of the owl are among nature's most innovative creations. Now the owl is inspiring a whole new breed of aeronautical designs.
We would very much like to fly like the owl, so that we're in complete silent flight.
We have a go for main engine start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have booster ignition and liftoff.
In just 100 years, aircraft design has evolved from biplanes built of wood and cloth to the B-2 stealth bomber. But so far, no one's been able to figure out how to fly like an owl. To go further, the future of flight needs a lot more imagination. For Jeffrey Lilly, owls are the inspiration for the next generation of commercial jets. He's an aeronautical engineer at NASA's Research Center in Langley, Virginia. Both the Apollo moonlander and the space shuttle were tested here. And right now, so are the aircraft of the future. They don't look like birds, but NASA hopes they'll at least act like them. And if all goes well, sometime in the not-too-distant future, we too will be able to take off, fly, and land just like, you guessed it. But for now, Jeffrey would be happy to incorporate just one of the natural principles of flight into large commercial jets, like designing a Boeing 757 to land as quietly as an owl, swooping in for the kill.
The problem is that with aircraft coming into land, the aircraft is flying low over people who live close to the airport. And when we looked at this problem, we just simply thought, well, is there any other vehicle flying in the sky at the present time that flies silently? The owl was silent as far as humans were concerned. And so the question was, if the owl can fly silently, why can't we do this on the airplane?
The owl is the ideal prototype for silent flight. Airborne, it's extremely stable and can glide steeply in for a landing in complete silence. Jeffrey Lilly's dream is to live right beside a busy international airport and never, ever hear a jet land. Owl technology could provide the answer.
Well, owl technology is associated with the ability of the owl to have techniques to reduce noise, bearing in mind that there is a change of scale, size, speed, and also materials, which mean that one would not be suggesting that aeroplanes in the future would be made of feathers, for instance. We will need to adapt what the owl did in solving this problem on its particular size. We want to use some of that technology and carry it over onto the airplane.
New composite materials, and especially new wing designs, are tested in NASA's wind tunnels. For now, this is where owl-inspired human technology is taking off.
Eventually, we will be able to have a performance on an aeroplane which relates very closely to the performance that we have of the owl.
In the airplane of the future, millions of computerized sensors embedded in its wings and fuselage will act just like a living central nervous system. And yet to be invented materials will allow its wings to bend naturally, just like a bird. NASA is the ultimate sandbox for aircraft designers. And by playing with ideas like pretending to be an owl to discover a way for a jetliner to land silently, today's dreams become tomorrow's technologies.
In the case of the owl is on the tree and is then coming down at this steep trajectory towards its prey. For the future, we want to have the same descent path, basically, keeping the aeroplane now higher until we're getting really very close to the airport, when we'll tilt the aircraft to come into a steeper trajectory before landing, meaning that most of the noise that is going to be generated by the airplane would be over the airfield rather than over the people. And if we could do exactly what the owl does in catching its prey, if we could do just that today with a vehicle the size of an airplane, I'm sure somebody should get a Nobel Prize for doing it.
It took millions of years for nature to perfect the owl's amazing aerodynamic design. Now, this incredible creature soars uniquely between its world and our own. And for those designing new generations of aircraft, they'll be learning from the owl for a long time to come. Completely silent and deadly accurate, the owl rules the sky with stealth and wisdom. Even the future won't know what hit it.
For over 1 million years, great rivers of ice have surged from their Arctic birthplace to claw at the Earth with massive, frozen talons. Thousands of meters deep, these rivers were created from simple roots. In times of relative cold, summer's sun fails to melt winter's snow. Snow accumulates until its own great weight compresses the layers below, forming ice. Then gravity takes hold, and the river begins to flow. Canada is home to over 100,000 glaciers, the most glaciated terrain in the world. To journey to a glacier is to travel back in time, to a place where the story of the Ice Age is still being written. And like oracles, they trace subtle paths towards our future. Glaciers, massive, majestic, and mysterious, are one of the last unknown frontiers on Earth, inspiring a frozen quest to divine the secrets in the ice. Out here, mankind seems small, inconsequential, and nature too powerful to comprehend. "18,000 years ago, Canada was consumed by the Laurentide ice sheet, ice as high as the oceans are deep. It carved mountains, gouged out the Great Lakes, and scraped the prairies flat. 8,000 years later, the ice had retreated. Yet today, in the coldest recesses of Canada, the last ice age still exists. This is St. Elias, the way the world once was. Located in the southwest corner of the Yukon, St. Elias is the largest ice field in the world, outside the polar regions. Towering above it, Mount Logan, the largest mass of granite on Earth, bears silent witness to 1,000,000 years of history. Biologist David Hick has come to Elias seeking the most sublime and delicate of mysteries. Here in this land of immense relief, a small, furry creature holds the key to life within the ice. The journey is a dangerous one. When ice flows, huge crevasses may open wide. Hick and his team must remain tethered and cautious in case the soft surface conceals a bottomless chasm beneath. These could be the first tracks ever laid in this place. Their destination is a small peak, jutting from the ice like an island in a frozen sea. Called Nunataks, an Inuit word meaning land attached, life exists here on a precarious perch. Plants and insects are blown in on the wind. Birds arrive, blown off course during migration. Once here, they may have no other option except to nourish this minute ecosystem with their bodies. Only one animal, the collared pika, has traveled across the ice with a purpose. It is this tiny mammal, one of nature's greatest survivalists, that draws David Hick to the ends of the earth. Living under 10 meters of snow for 10 months of the year, on grass stockpiled from an ecosystem the size of a blanket, during an ice age 120,000 years in the making, is the only life a pika knows.
My real interest in coming to these nunataks and looking for pikas and for the other plants and animals is really a curiosity about the limits of life, just how far and how extreme and how remote can we find places where plants and animals seem to live. And here on this nunatak, collared pikas and the plants, other plants and animals, they don't just live here, they thrive here.
A cousin of the rabbit, the pika lives 200 kilometers inside the ice field. The mystery is, how did they get here? Did they live on nunataks before the last ice age cut them off from the rest of the world? Or did they migrate from the mainland, seeking safe haven? "10 years ago, there were no questions. No one knew life existed here, until David Hick discovered pika thriving on the nunataks. Since then, he's spent every summer studying life as it was 20,000 years ago."
The evidence we have so far is that these pikas are able to disperse over very long distances. You can imagine a little rabbit the size of your fist hopping across 10 kilometers of ice and not only finding another place to live that has shelter and food, but also a mate.
A delicate, natural balance prevails in the St. Elias ice field. On a once frozen continent, the pika may be the only mammal to have survived the last ice age, and understanding this tiny, ancient survivalist might help us understand the modern mysteries of life as the planet heats up. The pika survived a cold world. The question is, can it survive a warming one? Those who pursue mysteries in the ice must brave some of the harshest weather the world has to offer.
Well, we've eaten the dogs.
The hot dogs, it is.
Yes.
On Eclipse Dome, in the heart of the St. Elias ice field, a team of researchers has been pinned in their tents for 5 days by a vicious storm. It is late August, summertime in most of Canada. The team from the Institute of Ocean Sciences in Victoria, British Columbia, has come a long way to Eclipse Dome to drill for deep and ultra-clean ice cores. They're searching for pollutants, man's footprint in a pristine world. The storm clears, nature rests, and it soon becomes apparent, as difficult as it may be, this is the best job in the world. As Mount Logan towers 6,000 meters above them, there's time for an open-air meal and the first look at the world in nearly a week. Invisible to the naked eye, the air mass is volatile here. Only 150 kilometers from the Pacific coast, Asian, European, and North American air masses collide directly over Eclipse Dome. Ice domes form at high altitude, in the open spaces between mountains, where perennial snow builds up over 1,000 centuries to dominate the landscape. Eclipse Dome is the perfect place to drill for evidence of man's industrial impact on the planet.
Ice is the one place where we've got a long-term chance to capture gases out of the atmosphere. They don't get captured in the ocean or ocean sediments. So you can get CO2, methane records, and things like that from a long way back. I mean, it's kind of neat to think that you can infer what the CO2 levels were in the atmosphere 30,000 years ago by looking at ice.
Like nothing else, glacial ice provides an indisputable portrait of the past. Today, it could provide a snapshot of the present, which we may not want to acknowledge.
Water here from the electric drill operation.
Michael Jeremasov lowers the drill hundreds of meters down into the history of the world. Their search is for mercury, a natural but deadly toxin penetrating the Earth's water and food supplies in dangerous concentrations. But if they looked, Krakatoa, Hiroshima, Chernobyl, and Mount St. Helens could also be found here. The world's farthest reaches have always maintained a communication with this place.
Any contaminant that gets an opportunity to come here, and it gets its opportunity by drifting in air masses, will eventually leave its imprint on this site. In the springtime in the Arctic, there's a phenomenon called the Arctic haze, and that happens particularly on the Alaskan coast, and I'm sure this site would have an opportunity of sampling it from time to time. And where does Arctic haze come from? Basically, it's Eastern European air masses that move across the Arctic Ocean in a period measured in weeks.
We leave the motors off until we get very close to the bottom of the hole, and then we restart the drill motors and approach the bottom slowly.
The history of all human activity has been scribed in this ice, including the tale of the Industrial Revolution.
I am convinced that there would be a lead record in here from our use of lead, particularly in gasoline back in the 60s and 70s. In fact, they started using lead in gasoline in 1927, and that record shows up all over the place. We could look at sulfate. That's a product of human activities. There's probably a record in here of organochlorines. I'm sure that if we collected enough material and we went in large enough volumes and worked at it hard enough, we would find a DDT record in here. We would find a PCB record in here. We would find a toxaphene record in here, despite the fact that toxaphene has not been used anywhere near this place. And the list goes on.
Ice, drawn from the belly of the glacier, thousands of years old, and a record of all that has transpired. Understanding the impact of human activities on the planet is the ecological riddle of our age. But the biggest risk here is that MacDonald himself will contaminate the core. This is the glaciologist's treasure, a frozen time capsule, 200 centuries of the Earth's collective memory embedded in ice. A world of terrible beauty and remorseless power. This is not a place man should come to make sense of his own folly. But the window on the world which Glaciers opens is only now beginning to be understood. The irony of Eclipse is this: industrialized man has polluted places he has never even been. The Rocky Mountains, Canada's most majestic range, is home to thousands of glaciers. This is Peyto, located on the southern edge of the Columbia icefield, straddling the continental divide between Alberta and British Columbia. It is one of the most southerly glaciers in Canada. The mystery here is global warming. Glaciologist Michael Demuth and assistant Terry Beck seek to reveal the glacier's 20,000-year history, and through it, understand recent dramatic changes in global climate. In the world of glaciers, Peyto qualifies as small, but in the world of science, Peyto is huge, one of the longest studied bodies of ice in the world. We understand more about this glacier than almost any other.
Peyto Glacier is part of a network of glaciers in Canada and North America and indeed globally that are used to monitor climate change. And using that network under the Global Climate Observing System and the World Glacier Monitoring Service, we're able to assess not only site-specific variations in climate, but build more regional and global pictures of climate variability.
Glaciers have ebbed and flowed through these mountain valleys for almost 3 million years. But it's now possible that within the lifetime of our grandchildren, they may be gone forever. In the flat accumulation zone at the top of Peyto, where the glacier was born, Demuth begins to drill.
What we hope to accomplish over the next few days is to hand auger down through the fern up here in the accumulation area and determine over the past few years, perhaps as far back as 10 years, the accumulation rate at this site, how much snow arrived and what was left at the end of each year, and collect an ice core which would have a chronology sort of like tree rings, sort of like counting tree rings, where we would have annual interfaces and between which we could calculate how much moisture arrived at this site year after year after year. Okay, easy, easy. As we recover the cores out of the glacier, we'll be photographing them, looking at the stratigraphy, and trying to identify visually the annual layers. And this is simply accomplished by looking for dirty horizons, which normally are coincident with the late summer, start of winter time.
And there's 1998 summer surface where that dirt layer is.
The ice core opens a window to the past, and through it the Earth's climatic history is revealed. What Michael Demuth sees is a dramatic change in the local climate.
In the mid-70s, there was a shift in the North American circulation pattern that created less snow in general in the winter in southwestern Canada and northwestern USA. And this pattern of less snow in winter has led to some drastic changes in the glaciers here.
Further down Peyto, below its receding toe, geographer Scott Munro is also studying the cause and effect of the glacier's melting.
Overall, we're losing ice. In this area, we have ice volume losses in the order of maybe 50 to 70% over the last century.
Dramatic change over a short period of time requires answers, and the sooner the better. Munro's work focuses on glacier energetics, how much energy from the sun the ice is absorbing, how fast the ice is melting, and the rapid change of atmospheric conditions. The blue ice of Peyto signifies old ice, newly exposed and without a protective cover of fresh snow to shield it from the sun. The effect is cumulative and predictable. The smaller the glacier, the faster it will melt, and Peyto is melting rapidly.
We consider Peyto Glacier in the worldwide context. Is it unusual? Not at all. This is a retreating glacier. It's smaller than it was. We see the same picture in Europe, in Asia, large parts of South America, well, large parts, the Andes, southern South America. This is a pretty typical of what is going on worldwide.
are emptying. Geographically, the phenomenon is widespread. Historically, it is without precedent. But the mystery persists. What part of the Earth's rapid warming is natural, and what part is man-made? So far, no one knows.
Well, to what degree should we duplicate this for one can really get a good picture of what's happening now to the glacier as compared to what has happened perhaps before humankind started influencing the Earth's climate.
I can calibrate that setup.
Alpine and mountain glaciers are losing mass at an accelerating rate that's perhaps broadly consistent. We haven't confirmed this absolutely, but broadly consistent with what we might expect with an enhanced greenhouse effect.
The greenhouse effect. We all know about it, but should we fear it? Millions of years ago, the ice caps were temperate forests. In 1996, glaciers gained more mass than they lost. Perhaps man takes too much credit for his influence on the planet. Perhaps nature is the greatest mystery of all. Back in the St. Elias Mountains, in the southwestern corner of the Yukon, glaciologist Gary Clark enjoys his walk to work on the Trap Ridge Glacier. The ice here is unique and dangerous. It may appear static, but in reality, it is dynamic. Like a dormant volcano waiting to erupt, unknown forces and tensions churn invisibly beneath its surface. Trap Ridge is a surging glacier, capable of sliding hundreds of meters in a single season. The mystery is, how?
You think of the glacial time scale as being decades or centuries, and we have fantastic events that occur in this glacier in a matter of 2 minutes, transforming the glacier from one state to another.
Imagine a freight train with no brakes, 10 kilometers long and weighing billions of tons, rolling downhill completely out of control with no possible means of stopping it. That is a surging glacier. A massive cresting wave, a barely contained power, waiting until unpredictably it decides to move.
The last surge of this glacier was in 1945. What we're trying to do is instrument this glacier and observe it when it clicks on for the next surge. People are most fascinated by the surface of glaciers because that's what you get to stand on and photograph. For glaciologists, the really interesting stuff all occurs at the contact between the bottom ice and the bed beneath it, because that's where the processes that control fast flow are active.
Fast flow means fast movement. Gary Clark has been studying Trap Ridge for 30 years and knows more about glaciers than perhaps anyone else on the planet. Yet Clark has still not got to the bottom of the problem: how to predict the next surge.
This is our hot water drill. The water's just a little bit below the boiling temperature. It's coming out at 2,500 psi of pressure. Jets through the glacier, just melts its way down. We can get about 100 meters an hour with this. So it means we can get right through the ice in less than an hour. Our big approach to studying this glacier is to fill it with instruments. This is the most densely instrumented piece of ice in the world. We drill 60 holes in it every year. We put 200 sensors in or on the glacier and record their information year-round. We've been doing this with this level of intensity for now more than a decade.
they've reached bedrock and lower a pressure gauge down into the glacier's frozen belly. Gary Clark seeks answers to the most important questions of our time. Predicting surges has impact far beyond this landlocked glacial outpost.
The kinds of things that interest us are the subglacial water pressure, which tends to be very close to the flotation pressure. And this is, in fact, what gives rise to the possibility of fast flow. When the glacier is flowing fast, it's virtually afloat on its own water.
Meltwater, sinking through the ice, can be trapped between glacier and bedrock. If enough water collects and becomes pressurized, the glacier can lift itself up and hydroplane down the valley, in effect riding its own wave. Like Pato, Trapridge is considered a small glacier. But when large glaciers move fast, as they have throughout history, the effects on the Earth's climate are immediate and immense.
The larger story is more relevant to the question of global climate. How do the large ice sheets behave? What physics dominates their flow, their expansion, their decay?
Over 75% of the world's population lives on or near ocean coastlines, exposed to any dramatic increase in sea levels. Continental ice sheets surged 6 times during the last ice age, sending fleets of icebergs the size of Manhattan into the sea. Ocean circulation patterns shut down. Temperatures rose 10 to 15 degrees almost overnight, and sea levels rose dramatically. The effect on the planet was nothing short of cataclysmic. If all the Earth's ice sheets surged or melted today, sea levels would rise over 70 meters, flooding inland by as much as 300 kilometers. How did ice sheets surge in the past? Will they again? And are human influences accelerating the possibility? These are perhaps the greatest and most important mysteries in the ice. In ways we can scarcely imagine, the world's great glaciers are central to our daily lives. When a tap is turned on in Canada, there's a good chance the water that pours out began its journey here, high in the Rocky Mountains. This is Snow Dome, the hydrologic apex of North America. From here, meltwater feeds 3 oceans, the Arctic, Pacific, even the Atlantic, 5,000 kilometers away. Melting ice, flowing down from Snow Dome, has provided the single most important condition of life for an entire continent. Water. It all begins with water. The change of state from solid to liquid is a moment of natural transformation. An elemental miracle. Only ice and water have shaped our Earth. Glaciers carved these valleys, slicing through rock with an inconceivable force. When they receded, great rivers replaced them, channeling torrents of melting ice down from the highlands and breathing life into the landscape. Along with deserts and sea floors, glaciers, like the ice age that spawned them, are one of the harshest environments on Earth, where life is a virtual impossibility. "20,000 years ago, this valley was filled to the brim with ice, as far as the eye could see. Mountains, thousands of meters in elevation, were mere nunataks, their peaks, like arcs drifting in a frozen wasteland, the only possible sanctuary. 10,000 years ago, this is what the world became. The glacier, long vanquished from this valley, had left behind the necessary ingredients for nature to thrive here. Sand flats on the river's edge provide rich sedge grasses for a hungry grizzly. On the edge of the former ice field, dull sheep find forage on steep slopes. Life here is as awesome as the force that created it. In the Yukon's Ruby Range, glaciers disappeared 15,000 years ago, and the pika, the great Ice Age survivalist, watched them melt. The mystery here is life after ice, drawing biologist David Hick down from the ice fields of St. Elias. Glacial boulder fields shade the pika from the sun, perfectly adapted to Ice Age life. If their body temperature increases 1 degree, they die. Isolated for thousands of years, pika are the most inbred mammal on Earth, creating a new age problem for the world's smallest farmer. To survive the long Yukon winter, a winter that in the past had no end, pika harvest grass and flowers and ingeniously store them in rocky nooks. To the glaciologist, ice is a planetary barometer. To the biologist, so is the pika.
What we're doing here today are collecting soil samples as well as samples of some of the species of plants that we've been working on closely for the last 4 or 5 years. And what we've found is that they're able to compensate for the removal of leaves by the pikas during the growing season. And by that I mean that through being grazed, they extend their own growing season and produce more leaves or more stems. So there's a positive feedback between the vegetation and the foraging by the pikas.
By studying pika in opposing ecosystems, on the ice fields and in mountain valleys, David Hick attempts to understand the challenges of surviving in a changing, warming world.
The plants and animals that grow here are really a function of the past glacial history and the current climate. And the changes that might occur over the next decades of climate change are difficult to predict, but we can look at sites that, for example, here in the Front Ranges, and compare them to the Ruby Ranges, which have a slightly longer growing season, and perhaps predict what these changes might be over time. And one of the things we know about pikas is that they don't like high temperatures. Their thermal lethal limit is very close to their body temperature. Probably doesn't have very much snow cover. You can see it's not very large either. Right. Yeah, again, this one's not active right now. They're reach a bit further back and get a bit more out of this, but all that looks pretty old. Well, that's last season's here. It's last season's, but a lot of this is just moss. So,
80% of the Ruby Range pika colony died this year, a direct result of global warming. For the pika, adaptation to rapid change may prove impossible. The world is simply moving too fast, forcing one of the great mysteries of life in the ice fields to vanish before David Hick gets his answers. Athabasca Glacier, flowing out of the Great Columbia Icefield in the Canadian Rockies, is one of the few glaciers in Canada you can drive to. In summer, over 6,000 people come here every day. The power and mystery of glaciers arouses the imagination and, like a magnet, draws us to them. In deference to a force greater than ourselves, we seem humbled by the ice and fascinated by its sheer, silent presence. We are not alone. Throughout history, people have always been drawn to these places.
On August the 14th, 1999, 3 hunters were traveling on foot through a glacial area within the Tachincini-Alsac Park in the extreme northwest corner of British Columbia when they came across some remains and artifacts, a hat and a throwing spear.
A glacier had yielded its greatest secret, an ancient man encased in ice. It may be one of the most important archaeological discoveries in Canadian history. The man carried with him a trove of well-crafted belongings, a beautifully woven hat, a stout walking stick, a spear thrower, and a leather pouch containing edible leaves and fish. The hat may be the key to the man's identity. He lived and died about 600 years ago and was probably on a journey, either to hunt or to trade with peoples living on the glacier's other side when he disappeared. Glaciologist Eric Blake was a member of the team that excavated the site.
To hear that some remains had been found was amazing. I must say one of my initial thoughts was feeling sorrow for the fellow and presumably his family when he didn't come home. The way that glaciers form is ideal in terms of preserving both a chronology and in fact preserving things in the ice. It's always laid down in layers with fresh snowfall. If you put anything on the surface, it's going to get buried in the snow and it's going to be kept at a cold temperature. So it's just great for preserving artifacts and or other organic tissue.
The body and artifacts were carefully tagged, wrapped, and transported to the Royal British Columbia Museum in Victoria. The discovery was made on the traditional lands of the Champagne and Asiac First Nation. They have named him Quadedansinchi, meaning long ago person found. Stories of traveling across glaciers are common in their oral history, and Quadedansinchi brings them to life. To science, the remarkable paradox of the discovery is that the glacier may never have given up its treasure if it had not been melting, back to the level it was 600 years ago. Now the body is once again frozen in time, safely stored in a freezer. The world's glaciers are melting. And as they shrink, more questions will be asked, more mysteries revealed. The 1990s have been the hottest decade in 1,000 years. 1998 was the hottest year. 1997 came in second.
Snow will fall at the ice field during the winter that can melt during the summer. It is not rare to have about...
Places in the Canadian Arctic have warmed 5.4 degrees this century. The poles will grow hotter, faster than the equator. Over the last 2 decades, the global temperature curve is the only curve steeper than the rise in the stock market. In 20 years, the Northwest Passage, the fabled route through Canada's Arctic ice, may crack wide open for the first time in millennia. Looking deep into the heart of a glacier speaks volumes about our own activities and their effects on the planet. They provide the clearest picture of the planet's past. And driving roughshod over it today is an omen for the future. As a frozen time capsule, ice is a silent oracle that speaks subtly about the Earth's natural history. Can the portraits glaciers describe of our past and present guide our passage into the future? Ice ages have been a part of the Earth's natural evolution for millions of years. Today, perhaps the real mystery is, will the planet ever experience another one?
Okay, Houston, we're maneuvering to the burn attitude. Bud, we copy the 12. Our motion to the left is...
After a 7-month, 119-million-mile journey into deep space, Mars, the bloody beacon of our imagination, appears like a heavenly apple, ripe for the picking.
Hello, 12, Houston, you're go for LOI. Roger, Houston.
Is there life here? What will it look like? Will we discover if we are alone in the universe or not? The question haunting all of mankind has finally driven us to Mars. But is it possible that we've already been here? A soft breeze blows from the west at about 10 kilometers an hour, and the temperature's a balmy 8 degrees, way up from last night's low of minus 200. It's a perfect day for a walk on Mars. In many remarkable ways, Mars is just like the Earth. A day here lasts 24 hours. And although further from the sun, it too has seasons. In the summer, temperatures can reach almost 80 degrees, causing its polar ice caps to melt. But you wouldn't want to live here. The atmosphere is 95% carbon dioxide and only 0.1% oxygen. Poison to life as we know it. And it appears to life here as well. Mars is half the size of Earth, but some geological features dwarf those on our planet. The volcano Olympus Mons rises 75,000 feet, 2.5 times the size of Everest. And the Valles Marineris Canyon would stretch from Vancouver to Halifax, the longest of its kind in the known solar system. In 1965, we got our first good look at Mars. Mariner 4's grainy pictures looked positively moon-like. Meteor impact craters were everywhere. On later missions, intriguing evidence of dried-up riverbeds appeared. Finally, in 1976, Vikings 1 and 2 landed on Mars, tested the soil, and found no organic material whatsoever. Yet even in its dryness, Mars betrays a watery past. In fact, everywhere you look, there's water. Or at least, there was. Geological formations suggest Mars was once a lot warmer and wetter, with an atmosphere much like Earth. The planet's reddish color is caused by iron-rich minerals oxidizing. In other words, rust. Mars is covered in it, we think leached to the surface by groundwater. So where did it go? Our best guess is that it's frozen at the poles or hidden underground. For life as we know it, no liquid water means no life. But for scientists, no clear evidence of water is no good reason not to go.
When we study the possibility of life on Mars, we're really concerned about three major things. First of all, could life have evolved independently on Mars? So in which case there are two types of life forms, one on Mars and one on Earth. Or did life evolve on Earth and then get transferred to Mars on bits of rocks thrown up by impact events? Another speculation, of course, is that life could have evolved on Mars and not evolved on Earth and actually been transferred to Earth on bits of rock, in which case we're all Martians.
Since the dawn of human history, we've dreamed of Martians. The ancients associated Mars with war and chaos, unaware its bloody color was only the reflection of a very rusty world. With the invention of the telescope, we took a closer look. In the late 1800s, Italian astronomer Giovanni Schiaparelli saw what he thought were man-made canals. In 1904, Percival Lowell, an American millionaire, seized on Schiaparelli's observations, sparing no expense to prove ingenious Martians were irrigating their drying, dying planet. It was one of the great wrong guesses in astronomical history. But Lowell and Schiaparelli did help launch a new century of studies and science fiction, inspiring the imagination of more than a few future scientists.
Mars is the Rosetta Stone for letting us know whether life is unique to the Earth or a general phenomenon in the universe, and letting us know whether life as we find it on Earth is the pattern for all life everywhere or just one small part of a much greater tapestry.
The challenge of our time is to go to Mars for the first time and to explore the place. And that's what it's about. It's about exploration. Going into the unknown, try to find out what's out there.
Since we first realized Earth was not the center of the universe, we've scoured the skies for company, and so far, we've found absolutely nothing. On Mars, life seems impossible, or is it? On Earth, recent discoveries of organisms thriving in bizarre, hostile environments has given us new hope of finding life on the red planet. And if we do find it, odds are it's microscopic, at best, minute. But if it's unlike anything living on Earth, the impact will be gigantic. For now, Mars is the place for us to go. There is one thing we do know about extraterrestrial life. It is not conveniently located. And to find it, scientists have stopped going to Roswell. Instead, they go to the harshest environment on Earth.
How you doing? I feel great. Good. I feel great. It's a good workout.
Of all the places on our planet, Devon Island is almost the red planet. With one exception, here there is life. Yet for those who want to go there, Devon Island has become a natural launching pad for the journey to Mars. Located in Canada's high Arctic, 400 kilometers from the magnetic North Pole, Devon Island is the largest uninhabited island in the world. Most of it is barren, unforgiving polar desert. In the east lies a gigantic permanent ice cap. In the west, one of the largest meteor impact craters on Earth. Every summer for the past 4 years, an international team of scientists has been drawn here to the floor of the Houghton impact crater. For 6 short weeks, with 24 hours of daylight to help maximize their time, they've come to work with a single purpose: to go to Mars.
Okay, Peter. Yes. It's actually between
Dr. Pascal Lee, a NASA planetary scientist, is project leader for the Houghton Mars project.
The scope of the project is twofold. Science is about geology, biology, life in extreme environments, analog studies between valleys and canyons on Devon and those on Mars. The other aspect is exploration research.
2626 Devon Crater, weather is 8 to 10 knots from the southwest across the runway, clear, good visibility.
We thought, why not study at the same time how exploration is done and what it would take to send humans to Mars. It's just like planning a camping trip. You have to put together a plan that's well thought out. I often say that the voyage to Mars is the mother of all camping trips.
For the 70 scientists and engineers who've traveled thousands of kilometers, hauling tons of equipment, telecommunications, fuel, and no portable toilets, this too is a mother of a trip. And now that they're here, isolated at the top of the world, everyone feels like an astronaut. In the lexicon of NASA, Devon Island is a Mars analog. Of all the environments that exist on Earth, this is the closest we can get to the climate and geography of Mars without going there. But for the Houghton Mars project, Devon Island is Mars. Exobiologist Dr. Charles Cockell studies the origins of life in the universe. And since we haven't found any yet, he's come to Devon Island.
We really have to constrain our search for life based on what we really understand and what we know. And that's why we come to a polar environment, because at least we know life can survive in this environment. And so if we go to Mars and look for similar types of life, at least we're on safe ground. It's something we understand and we know. And then if we get to Mars and we find that there are completely unknown forms of life there, then that's great.
What kinds of environments are favorable to life? What makes a planet happen? What makes it hospitable to life, capable of evolving? And how will we survive in a completely inhospitable world? The natural history of this barren world may reveal secrets about the next one out.
Devon Island is a Mars analog more than just from the standpoint of having an impact crater in the polar desert. It's also many valleys and channels and networks of canyons and other valleys around the crater and throughout the land of Devon Island that bear astonishing morphological resemblances with Mars. Is it just a coincidence that the valleys on Devon Island, the canyons on Devon Island look like the ones on Mars, at least some of the ones on Mars, or is there something fundamental, a common underlying cause, a common underlying origin?
Are the origins of life on Earth the same on Mars? To seek an answer to the question of the ages, we're drawn to Devon Island. And it appears we've come to the right place. The surface of Mars is pockmarked with meteor impact craters. Meteorites are destroyers of life. On Earth, they wiped out the dinosaurs. But they also create life and are fundamental in a planet's evolution. Millions of years ago, a meteorite the size of Manhattan slammed into Devon Island. The impact was equivalent to a 1,000-megaton bomb, destroying all life within a 150-kilometer radius and leaving behind a lake of molten rock 20 kilometers wide, which took 10,000 years to cool. Today, what remains is the best preserved meteor impact crater on Earth. For scientists on the Hot and Mars project, they study the crater not for what it destroyed, but what it created. Once upon a time, Mars was a much different planet, and so was Devon Island. At the time of the meteorite impact, the climate here was a lot like southern Canada's is today, and the record of that ancient time can be found everywhere inside the crater.
23 million years ago, this place was very different from what it is today. It was a boreal forest, little animals roaming around the woods, like a little rhinoceros, giant rabbits. And it is sort of interesting how such a distant past can be preserved in rocks. Rocks are like books, they tell a story. And when we go to Mars, we will be faced with many rocks whose stories need to be read.
A meteorite impact is like a nuclear steam shovel, digging up billions of years of history and in the process creating a massive amount of heat, a key element in the creation of life.
When an asteroid or comet hits the surface of the Earth, it sterilizes the area. Nothing can live. And then things begin to change. We're standing at the edge of the Horton impact crater, and we're standing here on a huge mound of impact breccia. This is the rock that fell back from the sky after the asteroid or comet hit the ground. And it's basically a molten pile of rocks that's fused together. The surface of Mars has been pounded by asteroid and comets for 4.5 billion years. And so by beginning to study the biology associated with these unique impact rocks, we can help to refine our ideas about how we might search for life on Mars.
There are certain habitats that exist which life will actually move into or colonize. Hydrothermal vents, created by a meteorite impact's extreme temperatures, are an ideal environment for life to begin. On Earth, it's possible that life was born in a place just like this.
Hydrothermal vents are an extraordinary opportunity for life. In fact, the word hydrothermal contains the two key ingredients for life: hydro, water, thermal, heat. Hydrothermal vents, for example, that are at the bottom of the oceans on the Earth, okay, where sunlight does not reach, still harbor life because they provide these two ingredients in particular. And the big question is it sufficient to just have heat and water and, of course, some basic chemicals around for life to evolve and start? You find life not exposed on rocks, but you find life inside rocks. You can pick up a rock here on the ground. It seems to be lifeless, but then you turn it over, and there is green.
Meteorites create more than just a hole in the ground, but the hole is important. In the aftermath of an impact, lakes form on the crater's floor. Ancient lake beds are like treasure chests, their secrets locked away until someone comes along with a key.
Everybody here has Mars on the mind. You walk out on some of the plains up here, you take a look across it, and it looks like you're looking at a Viking or a Pathfinder mission image. And all you have to do is add a little bit of red, and you feel like you're right there.
Just outside the crater's bowl, 3 kilometers from base camp, paleolimnologist Darlene Lim is searching for answers, buried for millions of years.
Paleolimnology is the study of the history of lakes, and a person would want to look at the history of lakes if you're looking to solve issues like climate change, for example, because at the bottom of a lake, sediment accumulates, and that sediment tells a story, and what it tells you is whether or not that lake has been changing through time. One of the ideas is that Mars had lakes in its past. So here we are examining a lake in an extreme environment and taking a core, and the hope is that someday we'll be able to put a core down in one of the ancient lake beds on Mars and examine that sediment record and see what happened to it and understand the environment there.
Like Earth, Mars has an ancient climatic history. It even has a climate today. Question is, did Mars once have a warmer climate, favorable to life? That answer may lie buried in its own craters. 23 million years ago, Devon Island was a different world with a very different climate. 3.5 billion years ago, so was Mars. On Earth, life has found incredible, if not impossible, ways to survive extremes of heat, cold, even meteorites. It's possible that same resilience existed on Mars.
By studying these places here at Houghton Crater, we're strategizing for our search for life on Mars. Maybe we will find some of the fossil remains of the life that would have thrived in that little transient phase of water richness and warmth. We don't know, and that's why we have to go.
On Earth, the ingenuity of life to thrive in impossible conditions continues to surprise us. On Devon Island, life thrives in about as impossible an environment there is on our planet, and it helps convince us that life on Mars is very possible. Since all the conditions for life here exist there,
is it possible for life to spring in an environment that might have been cold all the time? You come to the Arctic and you realize that you find life everywhere. Even if Mars was cold throughout its history, by coming to a place like this, we realize that it doesn't preclude life from having started there, and therefore, we still have a chance for finding life on Mars.
Our understanding of life on Earth tells us that really life needs two basic things. It needs a source of energy, and it also needs a solvent for all those reactions to happen. And on Earth, that's liquid water. Wherever there's liquid water, we generally find life. That's not always the case, but generally it's true. And so that's why we're so compelled by the idea of life on Mars, because we know it's a planet that once had liquid water. We also know it's a planet that has sunlight that can drive photosynthesis.
Summer is an explosion of life in the Arctic, lit by a sun that won't set for another 2 months. Over 180 bird species flock here to breed and feed incessantly on mosquitoes, the scourge of the north. Life seizes the moment to give birth and grow up quickly. Sooner than later, the Arctic will return to normal. For the muskox, the largest land animal in the Arctic and undisputed cold weather champion, summer is its least favorite season. This ancient, indestructible animal, more mammoth than ox, is happier withstanding minus 40-degree temperatures and howling 100-kilometer-per-hour winds. To survive, it depends on the warmest coat in nature and its uncanny ability to eke out a constant food supply in the harshest environment on Earth. On the treeless barrens, where the food chain can barely gain a foothold, incredibly, this bull weighs in at almost a ton. The instinct to survive the Arctic is as important as the amazing physical adaptations of life in this impossible world. A red-throated loon has built her nest isolated on her own private island, but it's no defense from an airborne pirate. The yager, once a gull, but now more like a hawk, has spied his lunch. Loons can swim and dive like seals, but like penguins, their webbed feet make them clumsy on land. The loon's only defense of her nest is to posture and scream in anger. Yagers are known as the thugs of the Arctic. Extremely aggressive, they're experts at surviving any way they can, even stealing food out of the mouths of other birds, or in this case, a loon's nest. But it appears that the loon's fierce maternal spirit is enough to save the day. The wolf spider, as its name suggests, also has fierce maternal instincts. It's too cold and windy up here to spin a web, so the wolf spider attaches its egg sac to the tip of her abdomen as she hunts the barrens for food. The high Arctic is a natural case study in survival. And those who study extreme environments also thrive in places like this. But exobiologist Charles Coquelle has another motive: life on another planet.
Exobiology is the study of the origin and distribution of life in the universe. Now, of course, we've never found life on any other planet, so it's really a science without a data point. And so we come to extreme environments like these to try and understand how life survives, with the idea of trying to look for life on places like Mars. In the early history of Mars, there was probably liquid water on the surface, and if there were lakes, it's lakes like these that we would expect to be similar to what might have existed on Mars. So by studying the type of life that exists in these lakes today, we could get ideas of how to look for life on Mars and the sorts of things that we might expect to find.
We probably won't find a miniature rhinoceros, but if there's water, there's a good chance we'll find something. Or will it find us?
My own work focuses on cyanobacteria, blue-green algae. These are very primitive organisms, and we know from the fossil record that they were living over the surface of the Earth 3.5 billion years ago. And that's the same time when there was liquid water on Mars. So if we had one planet, in other words Earth, that was covered in life, and one planet, Mars, that was completely sterile, that would be incredible. And in fact, it would almost be a more incredible scientific discovery to find that there was never life on Mars at all.
Is this what we'll find on Mars? Simple, single-celled, invisible to the naked eye, yet very alive? Impossible conditions for life does not mean life is impossible. And nature, at least the nature we know, remains mysterious on Earth and Mars. Life in the Arctic is brutal. Life on Mars is worse. But eventually we will go. Our thirst to explore makes us human and inspires us to take great risks. Round trip to Mars is a 3-year journey into unimaginable, uncharted territory. And when we get there, how will we live? Robert Zubrin is president of the Mars Society, an international organization fixated on man's quest for Mars. Zubrin has spent 3 years working with NASA to come to Devon Island and build the first Martian home.
What we're building here is a combination habitat, laboratory, and workshop with a similar architecture to the kind of module we would actually fly to Mars on the first human mission to Mars. And what this station will allow us to do is continue that exploration, but conduct it in the style that it would have to be conducted on Mars, under the same constraints. And by trying to actually do real field exploration under those constraints, we're going to butt up against the kind of problems that people are going to face in conducting real field exploration on Mars.
Getting to Devon Island is tough enough. Delivering 10 tons of prefabricated Mars habitat is a mission that requires a lot more muscle. 4 U.S. Marine paradrops are successful, but on the 5th, the parachute fails, damaging valuable equipment and the best laid plans of Robert Zubrin.
When our 5th paradrop failed, some people thought we'd have to stop. And I said, no, because we have people here on site to find a way around the problem, okay? And that's going to be the difference. On a human Mars mission, the crew is going to be the strongest link in the chain.
On Mars, the closest hardware store would be 119 million miles away. On Devon Island, it doesn't get much better. Zubrin must salvage his damaged equipment before starting construction on a job that will now take more time and a lot more effort.
Yesterday, we had one of our key tests, which was could we lift 2,000-pound object, 24 feet tall? Could we lift it straight up and moor it in place? And we did. And what's happened today is we passed the second big test, which is can we lift up additional sections and make them and bolt them exactly to the ones already up. And now we've shown we can do that. So now we have to keep on going around in a circle. And if our calculations are correct, when it comes around in a circle, the 2 ends will meet and we'll have a structure.
The Mars Society isn't the first to call Devon Island home. There's over 4,000 years of human history here. But today, only ghosts remain. Dr. Robert McGee has studied the history of this unforgiving world for over 40 years.
The first Inuit who moved from Alaska into Canada brought with them a very sophisticated maritime hunting technology based on hunting mainly the large bowhead whales, which are the biggest animals in the Arctic Sea. So they very rapidly developed an adaptation of the North Alaskan house. For rafters, they used the mandibles of bowhead whales, and which can be rafted together to cover these houses. Then the house would have been covered with walrus hide or maybe beluga hide, something fairly heavy, and covered with turf and snow, so you had no trouble keeping yourself sheltered from the Arctic winter. It took Europeans several centuries to learn how to survive in the Arctic, as well as the Inuit. The first expeditions, which came in the 16th century, came in the summer. They planted corn and beans and peas in the Arctic to see if it would survive. And when they were stuck here in the winter, they were totally finished. They just had no idea where they were.
In 1845, Sir John Franklin left England in search of the Northwest Passage and sailed straight into a frozen hell. Blocked by winter ice, he landed on the southwest coast of Devon Island. Mysteriously, his crew soon began to die. In 1982, forensic anthropologist Owen Beatty performed autopsies on the frozen remains of Franklin's men and found high levels of lead in their hair and fingernails. The source? A new invention he had brought with him, the tin can. Lead toxins from the solder binding the can together had leached into the food and slowly poisoned the crew. Franklin's expedition was doomed from the beginning. He thought he was well prepared for the Arctic, but never expected his own version of high technology would ultimately kill him.
Okay, stay where you are, guys. There we are, right there.
It's now day 5 for the habitat construction crew. Lifting the 1-ton panels with a damaged crane has slowed their progress and drained them physically. And now, finishing the job before the end of the short summer season has become a serious problem. But Zubrin knows leaving the unfinished structure exposed to an Arctic winter is not an option.
Getting close. Almost there.
Finally, all 12 wall panels are up, but now the two ends don't meet. After another solid 24-hour day, they solve that problem too.
My legs are aching, my muscles are aching, my voice is shot, but I feel about as good as a man can feel.
To go to Mars with current technology, it would take 2.5 years in all. This may seem like an extraordinary amount of time, but in the 19th century, people took 6 months to sail from England to Australia. They did it all the time. Okay, and many missions of exploration, like Lewis and Clark, were 2.5 to 3 years long. People are capable of doing this, and we're capable of doing this.
150 years ago, that's what John Franklin said too. And although the grave sites of his ill-fated crew are scattered across the Arctic, Franklin himself has never been found. Lost on Mars on Earth. For the spirit of adventure it kindles, Mars remains at the forefront of the human imagination and as our next destination. Someday, we will take a walk on Mars. We can only guess what secrets it will reveal. But for all the risks, there's no shortage of astronauts ready to accept the challenge of our lifetime.
I think going to Mars is going to be an adventure, and it will have its risks involved with getting there. I think it would be extremely exciting if I had the opportunity to head to Mars. You know, I'm going to wait to see how the future unfolds.
Mars is not the destination, it's the direction. All the planets in our solar system other than the Earth, it's the only one that has on it all the resources needed to support life, and therefore someday a new branch of human civilization. For our generation, Mars is the new world.
Congratulations.
Despite
well done, you turkeys. I would have never believed it, not in a million years.
The conditions for life seem to exist on Mars. At the same time, it's a very extreme planet. There's possible toxic chemicals in the surface soil of Mars. There's very high ultraviolet radiation. So ultimately, we don't really know how life would have coped with those extremes. And we can only really tell by actually going there and exploring the planet.
Would I go to Mars? My toothbrush is packed to steal a line from a friend. I don't know whether we'll find life on Mars. I don't know whether we'll find past life or present life. I don't know whether humans will actually have a future on Mars. Some people believe that it's a human destiny to travel to other planets. I don't know. What I find most rewarding right now is to be part of the journey. Here we are on Devon Island, okay, one of the most barren places on our planet. It is by understanding the details of why this place might be like Mars and why this place is actually different from Mars, we will gain a better understanding of both Mars and the Earth.
The unpredictable power of nature continues to humble us. We believe we can control it, even change it, until we're blindsided with new phenomena. 800 years ago, the Inuit on Devon Island, well adapted to the Arctic for over 4,000 winters, were surprised by a mini ice age. Unable to cope, they had to leave or starve. Since then, it has remained the largest uninhabited island in the world. The Mars we think we know seems incapable of sustaining life. We also know it once could, and for some unknown reason, lost it. Today, that mystery may also be solved right here on Devon Island. The high Arctic is the best place in the world to study global warming. Climate change is exaggerated at the poles, and in the last century, the average temperature has increased here by 5 degrees. At this rate, Before we set foot on Mars, our own polar ice caps will melt for the first time in 23 million years, causing havoc on the entire planet. It's a real problem, requiring real answers.
Over the past few years, we've begun to realize that there's actually an ozone hole opening up over the Arctic, which means that the levels of ultraviolet radiation here is increasing. And it's a result of the behavior of 6 billion badly behaved monkeys on the surface of the Earth. And all the work we do here will really help us not just to understand life in extreme environments, but the impact that humans might have on sensitive ecosystems like this.
Mars doesn't have an ozone shield. We don't know if it ever had one. But if it did, when we do get there, finding out how it disappeared could be important. Until then, Devon Island is as close as we may want to get to Mars. Any closer, and we could become Mars on Earth. Tugging constantly at man's spirit for adventure, the Arctic has challenged explorers for centuries. For most, the prize was the North Pole, but to get there, the journey often began here, on Ellesmere Island. This land of terrible beauty has lured many hardy souls seeking adventure, but who found only suffering or death. And it's been said that Ellesmere has the highest misery per visitor ratio in the world. One man knows the extreme allure of this island well. Jerry Kobalenko has walked more miles here than any living explorer. Defying the laws of the Arctic, he travels alone, following in the footsteps of the early explorers, learning from their mistakes and misery.
I think that the extremes are part of my attraction of travel here because I do fairly well when the going is hard. I wouldn't define a love of extremes as a drug. It's just it's a home. And I think home is not where you live, it's where you belong.
We call the world's tallest mountain the Third Pole, and challenge it simply because it's there. But to Jerry Kobalenko, there is nothing simple about Ellesmere Island, a place he calls the horizontal Everest. Think of the little metal disc that sits on top of a globe. Ellesmere Island lies just under that, its northern shore only 700 kilometers from the North Pole. An island almost the size of Great Britain, but with an average annual temperature of minus 20 degrees Celsius and less than 20 centimeters of precipitation a year. For the most part, Ellesmere is a polar desert. On first glance, life seems impossible here. But nature has made a pact with Ellesmere, a devil's bargain. An incredible diversity of species have adapted to this unforgiving world of ice and snow, but they can't leave. Their unique metabolisms thrive in the cold, but would fail any further south. In the new lexicon of the North, we call these creatures extremophiles. And Jerry Kobalenko is one of them.
I've always enjoyed the cold. The air is like chilled champagne. It's just beautiful.
Every year for the past 15 years, Jerry's left family and friends behind to spend 4 months alone on Ellesmere Island. He hauls all he needs to survive on a single sled and has traveled over 6,000 kilometers, more than any other living Arctic explorer.
Top of the world.
Like all creatures capable of making Ellesmere their home, Jerry too has evolved here and forged a unique relationship with one of the last truly wild places on Earth.
I began here as a hard traveler. I just wanted to do distance, get from A to B as hard as possible, push physical limits. And then I became interested in wildlife and photography and lately history on the island. So in a way, I've become a hard traveling student of the island.
Oh, that hurts.
Most explorers live for a challenge, but Jerry's annual return to Ellesmere is inspired by dark mysteries. Clues to what happens when the human mind collides with the unforgiving realities of the North.
I just happened to be wandering the island and turned up a skull, a human skull. It was the only skull I'd ever seen up to that point. But more than that, this had a cut above the ear. And it was clearly made from a sharp instrument coming down from above and from slightly behind. This guy was murdered centuries ago. So I just couldn't get out of my head the mystery behind his murder. And I think that was one of the first things that kept drawing me back to Ellesmere. The questions that some of these ghosts raise about what happened to them.
This man has become Jerry's latest obsession, Lieutenant Adolphus Greely, leader of a doomed expedition to Ellesmere in 1881, and Jerry has returned to solve the mystery of what went wrong. In the summer of 1881, Greely and 24 men set out to study the weather on Ellesmere Island. His team was composed of Army meteorologists, astronomers, and scientists, but no Arctic explorers. Only a few of the men could even row a boat. When their 2-year mission stretched to 3, their inexperience proved fatal. Few of the men would return alive. Greely's expedition is now considered one of the greatest disasters in Arctic history. And for Jerry, it is a mystery that begs to be solved. Why did they die, while he survives alone, year after year?
Following the footsteps of the old explorers, particularly when there was a tragedy, helps me understand people in dire straits, and that's very revealing. Greely captained a failed expedition where 19 died of 25. What happened to this guy?
Hugging the jagged edge of Ellesmere's east coast, Jerry travels north, following Greely's route to the place where this mystery begins. Greely's home for 2 years, Discovery Harbor. It is late spring on Ellesmere Island, and the ice is melting quickly. For Jerry Kobalenko, it's the best time of year to do some exploring. But then, he knows what he's doing. In 1881, Greely's expedition headed north along the coast by boat, seeking its new home base, Discovery Harbor.
Yeah, this is the end of the road.
This bleak coastline was to become home to 25 men for 2 years. Their ship arrived on August 13, 1881. Greely christened the site Fort Conger, named after one of his political allies back home in Washington. 18 tons of gear were unloaded, including 200 scientific instruments, 2,000 pounds of potatoes, and a plan.
Unlike most expeditions, they didn't keep their ship here. The ship went home, and they had arrangements for the ship to come back the following year to drop off some more supplies, and the year after that to pick them up.
They brought planks to build their quarters and used a wall of ice for insulation. Greely was the Army's top weatherman. He had his men collect data on weather every hour. Soon enough, they would experience Ellesmere's climate in their bones.
The sun disappears here in late October, and it doesn't rise till the third week of February. It's quite common for it to be minus 58 or 59 Celsius. It was cold enough at Fort Conger one year that when some men put whiskey outside, it froze solid. And so a few of them had the chance to eat hard liquor.
Their heat came from coal, dug out of a natural seam 7 kilometers away. It was the main reason Greely was drawn to Discovery Harbor. Today, his stove is the largest artifact that remains.
This is Greely's stove. They ate their bacon, their bully beef, and their beans on this stove. But when the first explorers after Greely came and looked inside, they found human skulls. Greely plundered a lot of Inuit graves and put them in the stove for safekeeping before he left. In that time, anything like that was archaeological research. All the skulls are gone now, and all that's left inside is some fox droppings.
Evidence of the expedition litters the Fort Conger site. Artifacts are almost perfectly preserved in the dry Arctic air. But so far, there are no clues here to the tragedy that awaited Greely and his men.
Walking in the footsteps of the explorers helps me understand to what extent they were good travelers and to what extent they were just kind of bumbling about. One of them, Ellison, whom Greely described as one of my loyalist men, though not of the brightest, planted a vegetable garden. And he tried to encourage the seeds to grow in this cold climate by pouring boiling water over them. They didn't fare too well.
Greely knew his men would be happier with fresh meat than tinned beef, so the men searched the island for game. They discovered a strange menagerie of creatures who thrived in this barren landscape. Among them, the world's largest hare, the Arctic hare. Weighing in at 6 kilograms, it is cat-sized, but with a remarkable trick for escaping predators like the Arctic fox. Leaping upright allows them to reach speeds of up to 50 kilometers an hour, making them the fastest animal in the Arctic. Like many Arctic animals, this hare never hibernates, surviving winters by digging down to find food. Even stranger, they travel in herds, sometimes numbering in the thousands. For the Arctic hare, there's safety in numbers. But for explorers, danger's what it's all about. During the winter of 1882, Greely set aside science for dreams of glory. He ordered his men to head north to set new records in exploration. They returned frostbitten and snowblind. For Greely's generation, the Arctic was known as the Circle of Mysteries. No one knew what lay between here and the North Pole, so Greely sent his men to Greenland, where they set a new latitude record by 6 kilometers. But the Arctic's Mount Everest, the North Pole, would await this man, Commander Robert E. Peary, who claimed the pole a generation later.
When Peary came to Fort Conger, Greely had been gone for about 20 years, and he found this huge edifice that Greely had built. Peary called it this great barn of a place. He demolished it, and he built these 3 small cabins that he felt were much more efficient. He first reached Fort Conger in the middle of the winter, the polar night. He froze his toes. And here, at this very place, he had to have his doctor cut off 8 of those toes without anesthetic. He lay here in agony for months.
In Greely's day, the North Pole seemed impossibly distant. So when he decided to lead an exploration team of his own, he headed west into the uncharted interior of Ellesmere Island, a world no white man had ever seen, and a route never retraced until now. In the spring of 1882, Lieutenant Adolphus Greely led 4 men into the interior of Ellesmere Island. Now, Jerry Kovalenko retraces their path alone, searching for artifacts and answers.
Somebody said that the high Arctic is an empire where, in the summer at least, the sun never sets. I love the 24 hours of daylight that lets you go as hard as you want to for as long as you want to.
Greely left the safety of Fort Conger and headed westward into completely uncharted territory. He found a glacier left over from the last ice age, 50 kilometers long and 10 wide. He named it Henrietta, after his wife. Greely wrote to her constantly, "When I get back to you, have no fear that I will ever be willing to leave you again. One such separation is enough for a lifetime." Greely's biggest discovery was a vast oasis in this polar desert. At 500 square kilometers, this is the largest lake in the high north. Greely named it Lake Hazen, for a general he knew during the American Civil War. Even with 24 hours of sunlight a day, there is ice everywhere. Up here, there's a saying that white men think of ice as frozen water, but the Inuit think of water as melted ice. It is the Arctic's great shapeshifter. Here, there is only one cardinal rule: never travel alone. Jerry's solitary style is unusual and risky.
I don't have a fear of dying alone or falling through ice. It's possible for anything to happen anywhere. It's possible to be walking on a sidewalk and get clipped by a car that jumps the curb. On my first expedition, I had a fall through the ice and it really shook me. My emergency transmitter didn't work, and it taught me that bringing gadgets like that along is very dangerous. And so since then, I haven't taken any with me because I don't want to rely psychologically on anything but myself and my understanding of the land. As a walker, feet are absolutely the most important part of your body, and you have to treat them like they're gold. As long as you have your wheels, you can make tracks, but the minute the wheels fall off, you're in trouble.
Lake Hazen is a true oasis, surrounded by polar desert. The melting glacier brings new water each year. The open water attracts travelers like the snow goose, who has a one-track mind. Courtship is brief and direct here. There's no time to be coy. Families must get started quickly, before the ice returns. Greeley reached these shores in June of 1882. He found the lake teeming with butterflies and waterfowl. He came with 4 men and a cart packed with telescopes, sextants, and gear. It broke down somewhere near the lake. Now, 120 years later, Jerry wants to find it.
This side of Hazen has a face that only a mother could love, really. This is a polar desert, so you're not getting a lot of swamp. You will get tussocks at the foot of slopes caused by seepage in the permafrost. They're like walking on beach balls. It might have even been the sort of thing that broke down their cart eventually. It's one of those holy grails of the island, and I'd really like to find it.
Greeley's men dragged their cart 200 kilometers before its wheels finally fell off, but no one knows where. We do know that Greeley and his men celebrated the 4th of July with rum and lime by the water's edge. Jerry can't find the cart on the shore and decides to head into the surrounding hills to continue his search. The hills are home to one of nature's greatest explorers, the long-tailed yager. It migrates up to 15,000 kilometers to nest only here in the high Arctic. Greeley made notes on his next find, the wildflowers that explode on these hillsides for only a few weeks each year.
Greeley's journal at the Library of Congress, he talks about how everyone went through a brief flower craze when they were gathering flowers and pressing them to bring south. And sure enough, there were still dried flowers in Greeley's journal.
Any life here is a miracle. This polar desert receives less precipitation than the Great Sahara itself.
Well, 120 years later, the cart is obviously going to have changed from when Greeley left it. But this area is so dry, so cold, that it will not have rotted. The metal pieces of the wheel will be intact. There'll be a lot of old timbers that'll still be around.
Nothing, it seems, ever disappears on Ellesmere. Clues can last for centuries. Even the dead find it hard to hide.
I don't like this because it makes me feel like a shaman, and I'm not a shaman.
The muskox skull may be centuries old, a sign that the cart itself is still out there somewhere. And so Jerry presses on, certain that clues to Greeley's demise lie ahead. This skull will not be the last reminder of the life and death struggle that is Ellesmere Island. Jerry Kobalenko continues his search for Greeley's cart. He travels westward on Ellesmere Island and enters a terrain where hooves, not wheels, are the best way to get around. This shaggy creature is the muskox, perhaps the perfect extremophile. It is the island's largest land mammal, The Inuit named it Umingmak, or the bearded one. Its remarkable fur has two linings, allowing it to survive temperatures that plunge to minus 50 degrees Celsius. For this species, the Ice Age never ended.
Muskox really are Ice Age relics. Their prehistoric cave paintings come to life. They're contemporaries of the woolly mammoth and the saber-toothed tiger. When you look at them, you sometimes think they're just standing there patiently awaiting the next Ice Age.
To Greely, the muskox were a miracle, easy to hunt and full of meat. His men killed 31 in a single month and then waited for winter to drag them back to camp. Jerry has spent years planning his search for Greely's cart. But after 7 days scouring Lake Hazen, he's found no clue to Greely's time here.
If you look for something up here, you tend not to find it. So it's not the finding of the cart. It's the quest for something that really drives me here.
But where did Greely go next? Lake Hazen is vast, 500 square kilometers in size. The cart could be anywhere. When it broke down, Greely carried on undaunted, and Jerry follows. He moves northwards, following Greely towards Mount Barbeau in the United States range. Greely's men were suffering now. Their feet hurt, some raw and bleeding from too much walking. 2 men were forced back to Fort Conger, while Greely and the others forged on. Jerry follows them into an Ice Age landscape. No one knows if the glaciers of Ellesmere are the remains of the last great age of ice that ended 10,000 years ago. In fact, no one knows how many glaciers are on the island. There could be hundreds, but their power is undeniable. Like mammoth, slow-moving bulldozers, they scoured this landscape, leaving behind boulders the size of houses, scattered erratically on these flat, barren plateaus. And here they serve a unique purpose. The rocks trap the sun's heat. Plants take root and thrive on these small islands of warmth. To us, rocks are solid, but to moss, they are full of holes, filled with life-giving moisture. This boulder is like a greenhouse, heating up during the day and staying warm all night. It creates a microclimate, and often, even when there's snow on the ground, allows insects, like the caterpillar, to come alive. These are called woolly bears, another extremophile designed especially for survival in the cold.
Who'd imagine down south caterpillars crawling around in the snow? But if you watch these guys carefully, you see how they meticulously stick on black rocks where it's warm. So they not only have the chemistry, the natural antifreeze to survive here, but they're also smart in a simple way.
Jerry heads north into a mountain range buried in ice. Greely never got this far, but Jerry can't resist the lure of a new challenge, even though climbing alone is risky. These mountains are called nunataks, and only the tips of their peaks are visible above 900 meters of ancient glacial ice. The most unique mountain of them all is Mount Barbeau, 150 kilometers west of Fort Conger. At 2,600 meters, it is the largest mountain in North America east of the Rockies. It's known as the Mecca of mountaineering. Everest may be tougher to climb, But there is no mountain in the world harder to reach than Mount Barbeau, and Jerry has never been here before. If he reaches the top, he will see more of Ellesmere Island in a minute than he has seen in 15 years.
I've always said that I go for high latitudes, not high altitudes. And here I'm both. And what a night, what a night.
Jerry reaches the summit at 2 in the morning, one of the first to climb it in the 21st century, and the only one to ever bring along a television camera. This haunting panorama has never been filmed before now.
From here, it's all downhill to the Rocky Mountains to the west, and all downhill to Mexico to the south. We're 8,700 feet at the top of the world. You just see this endless plain of white rolling on into forever with just a few little rocky peaks or nunataks sticking out of the sheet. It's a very austere world, strangely beckoning and also hostile at the same time.
From the summit of Mount Barbeau, Jerry can see the route Greely and his men took to escape Ellesmere. For him, the mystery prevails. Why did so many of Greely's men perish? And how can one man thrive while others are destroyed by the same ice world? Jerry Kovalenko heads south along the east coast of Ellesmere Island, following the Greely expedition's escape route. In the spring of 1883, their rescue ship fails to arrive. After 721 days alone, Greely orders his men into a ragtag flotilla of boats. They will head south through more than 400 kilometers of ice-choked waters. Their destination is a small outcrop of rock called Pym Island. "25 men, 40 days' food, and not a single sailor." Greely earns the men's hatred by making mistakes. The boats get trapped on an ice floe which drifts aimlessly for a month, as their food runs dangerously low. One crewman writes of Greely, "This man, I cannot call him a gentleman, comes among us like a serpent in Eden and creates eternal hatred towards himself."
They thought their commander was insane, and in fact, there was a little bit of a conspiracy with the doctor and some others to have Greely declared insane. But what they didn't realize was that the supply ship was not blocked by ice, but that it had been caught in the ice and crushed like a walnut is crushed by a nutcracker. And so it was at the bottom of Kane Basin. There was nobody coming for them. Greely had no way of knowing this.
Incredibly, after a grim 59-day journey, they reached their destination safely, Pym Island, on Ellesmere's southeast coast. Ancient stones are thrown together to create a tiny makeshift shelter. Their roof is a tarpaulin, stretched over their last boat. 6 months of darkness lie ahead, and just 2 months of food.
There are 25 guys inside this stone wall under a tarpaulin, insulated with snow blocks. They had a scale that measured to the 16th of an ounce. So the guy next to you would not get 1 pea or 1 sliver of bully beef more than you.
They seem to have opened some of their tin cans anyway. The really old-fashioned way. They took a knife, and they cut across, and then they peeled back the corners.
Now, with only a month of daylight remaining, Greely orders his men to find food anywhere they can. Most look for supplies left by other expeditions, with little luck. The ice begins to clog the waters. The strongest take rifles and look for anything to kill. In a region with names like Thank God Harbor and Lifeboat Cove, no one gives this place a hopeful name. But there is food here. One soldier builds a net to catch shrimp-like creatures. They become a staple of their meager diet. But just 1 day's walk away, there is an answer to their prayers. This is a polynia. Strong tidal currents keep this water open all year, creating a magnet for game on an island where no creature ever hibernates.
This is definitely something you don't want to do at 40 below. 40 below kayak. It's what adventurers who haven't been nice to their mothers are sentenced to in hell.
Here, kayakers tend to be very conservative because if anything happens, you're basically dead.
Polynias are the true oases of the Arctic. Walrus congregate here in herds, and just a few of these massive mammals could have supplied Greely's men with enough meat and blubber to survive all winter. But they're also dangerous. Able hunters, they eat seals.
In a kayak, walrus are really the only danger. Walrus are in fact the most dangerous animal in the Arctic. Their heads are just huge and their eyes are big and bloodshot, and they just stare at you and you're just kind of wondering what they think.
They're also very clever, using their tusks to haul their huge weight onto ice floes. Weighing in at over a ton, they're strong enough to flip any boat or kayak that comes near.
The explorers told stories of walrus taking a man between his flippers and sucking all the flesh off his face like they do with clams.
This polynia could have fed Greely's men for months, and yet they never found it. Just a day's walk from their camp. Polynias attract every kind of creature. The tempering warmth of open water even helps keep the surrounding hills clear of snow, allowing muskox to feed here as well.
There are so many muskox not far away that a much more competent explorer who came 15 years later established hunting camps not far from this area. So had Greely come here and worked this area a little bit more, it's very likely they would all have survived.
Greely, it seems, had more faith in men than nature. Now desperate, he orders his men to find any food left by previous expeditions, no matter how far away. In the end, his tragic mistakes would cost the lives of 19 men. Spring at the Polinia on southeastern Ellesmere Island. Dozens of species begin to gather here, rejoicing in the new warmth. This smorgasbord of wildlife was ignored by the ill-fated Greely expedition. No animal here need fear their rifles. The hunters were too weak to leave their camp, even to save their own lives.
Greely expected to be rescued. And so their thought was, okay, we have a certain amount of food, let's try to stretch it out. They would have been much better served by coming in here and hunting the seals or hunting the walrus that would be around the Polinia. But they didn't understand the place. They had no idea this inner bay was so rich, and they starved to death what was really a one-day walk from here.
By the spring of 1884, none of the men is strong enough to walk for more than an hour or two. This lonesome cove had become their prison. A few animals wander within rifle range of the camp, but it's too little, too late.
Greely's Camp Clay is the most haunted place I've ever seen.
Sealskin pants are boiled and eaten. Greely, like most of the men, is too weak to even get out of his sleeping bag. And when a man dies of starvation, he's kept in Greely's bag until he becomes too cold. Delirium seizes the men, and food theft is common. Ultimately, Greely is forced to execute a Private Henry for stealing only a few mouthfuls of food. Three weeks later, on June 22nd, 1884, the rescue ship arrives. Its captain doubts that anyone could have survived a third winter without new supplies, and he prepares for the worst. They find only 6 men left. 19 have died. Miraculously, Greely himself has survived by sheer force of will. The emaciated survivors are brought on board ship. So are the dead, and here the crew discovers an awful secret. Some of the bodies seem to have been sliced up for food. Greely denies any knowledge, and so did the rest of his men. At home, news headlines call it the shame of the nation. But Greely himself is promoted to Brigadier General. In the end, he never returns to the Arctic and dies in 1935 at the venerable age of 91. After 3 years of scientific study on Ellesmere Island, Greely never did learn the Arctic's singular lesson. Life survives here only by adapting and becoming part of the Arctic, thriving on its extreme conditions. Humility is the only rule. Those who disobey disappear. But unlike many who came before him, Jerry Kobolenko has adapted. He too is an extremophile and has made this his own personal Everest. And unlike Greely, he keeps coming back.
I try to take what the Arctic throws at me in stride. You feel not that you have conquered the land, but that the place has allowed you to travel through it. My worst fear is the day I come here and I find I no longer enjoy it. Eventually you reach the age when this sort of travel is too hard a life for you. That's the thing that I'm most afraid of.
The nameless skull that inspires Jerry Kovalenko to return again and again to his mountain of an island rests on a carpet of lush green moss. Nitrogen is in short supply in the lean Arctic topsoil, and here the land itself literally sucks it out of the bone. On Ellesmere, death always nourishes life. It is nature's great mystery.
Thank you.